My name is Matt Dunlop. I'm the CISO for Under Armour, and here to talk to you today about blockchain, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and big data analytics. And so hopefully I filled out some people's cyber bingo cards. But no, actually we're here to talk about lessons post-breach, and I'll turn it over to Toke to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Toke, Vandervoort, rhymes with Mocha, just to put a finer point on it. And I am the Deputy General Counsel for Under Armour. And you are probably asking yourself, why is shirts and shoes up on the stage here? Just put a little more context around it. Under Armour is not only a global retailer, which gives us a lot to be concerned about in terms of our digital and consumer presence, but we also boast two of the world's largest fitness and wellness applications in the way of MyFitnessPal and MapMyFitness. I hope you're all users. We have shoes with chips in them that process data for people's runs and do real-time coaching, and so have a lot of information in them. We've got a watch, we've got pajamas with performance and recovery claims. It's not what you're thinking. So we are very much an IP-driven, data-driven, technology-driven enterprise with a lot of these concerns. And because no presentation from any Under Armour executives would be complete without a sports-themed motivational video, we have this for you.
Oh, no, next slide.
Hey, what you doing this for? Just out here for recreational purposes? No. Working, man.
Mission today is to work hard until you can't go no more. It's always a team mission. Can't get nowhere without the team. It takes everybody.
1, 2, 3. Hey, you better be open. You better be open. Man, listen, There's only one attitude that you gotta bring. Let's go. That you need to bring.
Come on, work. I mean, we come out here every day to get better. If it was easy, everybody would do it, man.
We work out on the street, you feel me? We the best in the nation. We outwork y'all, we outwork anybody. We always grinding, always getting better.
Every time I come through these lines, no matter what these lines at, work. Maximum effort.
Let's go.
All right, so while I always hate to follow motivational videos,
And Cam Newton.
I guess I got the short straw on that one. Anyway, so most of you are aware we had a breach in early 2018, one of the largest in 2018. Not to brag or anything, but it was on our connected fitness application, MapMyFitness. And so we were asked to come talk about the lessons learned post-breach, but we're really going to probably focus more on the lessons learned pre-breach and the preparation pre-breach and how you successfully navigate through a breach. And so, and part of it is the learning experience. And unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your perspective, there are tons of lessons in the news every single day to learn from. And it's important to see those and capitalize on them and learn from them.
So Matt's point that he's making, I think, is a really good one, which is pay attention to the mistakes of others. It was, because you're not going to make them all yourself, basically. It was advice given to by my daughter's kindergarten teacher, and it's something that I've tried to take with me. You look at those things, and they are learning events, and you don't go into them thinking that. But the sheer number of breaches that are out there that are reported, and the obvious success of the bad guys that the people in this room are charged with responsibility for thwarting, kind of tell us that no program is ever going to be perfect, right? And as good as your technical bits will be, part of this is the preparation that you will have in the event of an actual emergency, so to speak. And both of those are very, very important. And so from both of our roles, we're sort of here to talk about each side of that preparation and those learning experiences, both from ours and from others. So to capitalize on this, protecting your house is as much about your cyber program as it is about your response program. And how prepared you are in both of those sectors is going to matter to what you learn and what you're prepared for going into an event. It's sort of equal parts digital citizenship, corporate citizenship, and just plain old good citizenship, because quite frankly, what you're protecting is not just your users' information, you're protecting your teammates' information, your company IP, your financials, your business plan, but it's so important that you're also protecting your company's reputation, and of course, if you're a publicly traded company, let's be real, you're protecting your shareholder value.
And so, I'm sure most of you read the news every day and you see the different breaches that occur, and you'll probably notice a consistent theme. It's things like ransomware, cloud container security, and et cetera. But if you read the post-breach notes, they're always the same thing. They're always user clicked on phishing email, misconfigured cloud container, inappropriate use of security keys, and so on and so on. Never do you see in the news that the company suffered a breach because they didn't have a specific tool or technology. And so, in fact, before I came to Under Armour, I was at U.S. Cyber Command, and I led an offensive tools division at Cyber Command. And when I first came into Under Armour, my team was asking me, so what really should we be focused on from a attack perspective? And I'm like, everyone wants to develop these really cool 0 days and everything like that, but it's not about the 0 day. We would be the same as the adversary. We look for the low-hanging fruit. The tricking the user into doing something that that they shouldn't do. And so it really comes down to an effective training program. And if you look at how we do training nowadays, and you look at things like the recent Proofpoint report in 2019 that said 99% of errors are the result of a user mistake that they did that allowed the adversary in. And so, how do we make the users better cyber citizens? And it comes down to, everybody here I'm sure does their annual cybersecurity awareness training, the same as you do your annual HR training and your annual this and that training. And we have so much annual training that we really could probably just carve 2 weeks out of our schedule every year to just do annual training. But if you've done the annual, not that I've ever done this before, but you just run it in the background and you listen to Charlie Brown's teachers stopping talking, and then you hit next. And so we want to get, you really want to get away from that. You want to really make your training engaging. You want to make it short enough that it isn't worth backgrounding, and focused. Maybe this month it's focused on phishing awareness. Maybe next month it's focused on, password hygiene, data retention, things like that. And then the other thing we've done is we've gone to the individual business units, and we've started to host lunch and learns. How can I make cybersecurity relevant to FP&A? How can I make cybersecurity relevant to HR, to supply chain? We tailor the training depending on the audience, and it seems to be a lot more receptive. But really, when we talk about training, we're talking about a more fundamental problem that we've kind of done to ourselves, in that we just don't educate people on cyber. This is kind of my soapbox. Anyone's heard me talk before, I get on the soapbox all the time, is we don't train our youth, we don't train our adults to be to use the technology we give them. You look at your core curriculum in the elementary schools, and nowhere in there is technology, but yet we hand all of our kids a phone, and we don't teach them how to use it. And so it's no wonder that people click on things that they shouldn't click on because they've never been told not to do that. And so so it's an issue of engaging them, training them, making it relevant, in the training, making it something that they can apply to their personal lives, because it's most likely the same thing they could apply to their work life. But despite all that, no matter how much you do, the barrier to entry is getting lower and lower. So there's going to be security incidents. We see them every day, and so the steps that you take to prepare and execute what a cyber incident looks like are really going to pay dividends in the long run.
Okay, so you've got your cyber program, you've got your training, you've got your technologies, you've got your administrative protocols, and all the things that we know are sort of the best practices that have been, pounded into us over time. But really what you also need at the other end of that is a response plan, right? And I don't know how many of you have them. I don't know how many of you have them and have put them on the shelf where you might see them, or they're in a drawer somewhere. This is one of those things that I feel very strongly is a living, breathing thing. Because one of the things you want to do is make sure that it addresses, obviously, the major activities under a response plan. You want to stop the loss and control, whatever the event is. You need to preserve evidence of what's been happening, right? You need to make sure that you prepare yourself for for the postmortem that you're going to need to do. You're going to need to make sure that you've got all the records that you need to determine when and how and what happened. You need to know that your notice obligations are ticking. There's a clock that is loudly ticking. International and domestic obligations start running a clock the minute you are aware of something that's happened, and even if you don't have all the details, you may have obligations to report to regulators and eventually to report to your user base and to consumers out there and to the public. And so all of those things are the activities that you really want your response plan to detail so that you know that you're checking the boxes. But the other thing that is so vital in a response plan is to make sure that it establishes the relationships. And among the things that are so necessary, obviously, is who leads your response. What does your core team look like? In our case, Matt and I co-lead that response team with members of our individual teams and my privacy team. But really what is part of the key difference there is we meet every other week. For the record, we do not have an event every other week, right? I want to be super clear about that. But we get together and we talk about what's happening, what trends are happening in the industry, what trends are happening in cybersecurity, what we're seeing in our business, and if anything's going on. And so we have those relationships so that when on a Sunday night in March of 2018, your CISO calls you at home at 8 o'clock and says, we have a problem. You know exactly who the people are that you're going to be working with, and you have a high degree of trust established with them. Now, you're immediately going to be going outside to partners that you have a relationship with as well. One of them is critically going to be your outside counsel. And having that relationship set up in advance is important because what you don't want to be doing is doing the dog and pony show to figure out who you're going to work with or getting multiple bids in the moment. You need to have a focus right there. Your IR team, of course, is an important one. And if they know your business and they know your network, they're going to be a lot more nimble in terms of coming in and being able to help you solve these things and do the various things that you need to do to address the matter at hand. You also want to know that your PR team is already engaged and that they understand some really essential things about your company. Who you are, what market you're in, who your constituent users and the listeners to your message are, and a really critical thing is about the values of your company, so how you want to approach that. And then the last one that you want to have, I don't know how many of you in the room are from law enforcement, you're welcome for my saying this, make sure you know who your law enforcement contacts are too, because you shouldn't be afraid to contact them. They can be helpful in a number of ways. It's a topic for another day, but that's another one that you'll want to have established ahead of time. Those are all super important, again, because when you're in that crisis, you're going to need to know who to go to. The one last thing you're also going to need to know is those are your core players who are going to be executing on the breach response and doing the many things that you need to do to make sure that you've got all those tasks buttoned up. But you also need to know your escalation path because everyone doesn't need to know. They don't need to be read in. You want to keep it tight, right, for both privilege purposes and evidentiary purposes and public relations purposes. So knowing your escalation path through your organization, and if you're a public company, when to invoke the CEO and the board and what triggers that makes. But practicing this is one of the most critical things. It's one thing to know who the players are, but testing this plan, at least on an annual basis, you'll test it in real time and you'll learn some things from it, which is why we were invited here today, but testing it just in the environment in a safe space gives the people who are the decision makers among that escalation path and among the core contributors an opportunity to feel like what it means to make decisions without complete information, because you won't have it, right? To make them fast, because you have to, right? And to understand what the sensitivities are if one is in supply chain and the other is in IT and one is in HR. Like, oh, if I make this decision, it's going to impact you, or I need to think about my teammate communications because this is going to impact ways of work. Whatever those cross-functional sensitivities are that raise the empathy level among those people. I realize this is just the soft part of cybersecurity, but it is a really vital part of the success of your plan.
So just to hit on a point that Toke made earlier, has anyone noticed that these things never hit on a Monday through Thursday?
Nope.
I don't know what it is with that, but it's always like a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I can't figure it out. But anyway, you know, so far what we've talked about is really how to protect yourself and how to prepare and navigate through an internal security incident. But if you've been reading the papers and you've seen the current trends, you know, there's a lot of the adversaries focusing on the external, the third-party partners. How do you protect yourself against the third-party partners? How do you protect yourself against the things outside of your control? And you know, it's like, why are we seeing all these third-party compromises now? And it's really pretty simple. Is, you know, for the government people in the room, you know, we like the lowest bidder, and you know, when they are bidding that price, they're cutting corners somewhere, and a lot of times it's, you know, less robust security programs. And so these vendors were allowing into, a lot of these vendors were allowing into our networks to do configurations and things like that. So if it's a path into the network that that is potentially a you know, lower barrier of entry, and but it's also you know, just how they implement security may not be the same as you, and so they may not synchronize those connections, and whether it's a direct connection or even a indirect connection. You know, we're all using vendors because it may not make sense for us to do that work or whatever other reason, but the key is that that we, you know, we have to implement a robust external audit procedure. You know, you can't just rely on them to have the right guidelines in place. You best protect yourself by making sure you set up something that they have to do some external attestation, and you know, whether you know, initially when you first bring the person on board, but then annually, and to go back and hit on, you know, like what you're seeing now in the press is you're seeing a trend toward, it's not just the company that's or it's not, you know, it's not the third-party company that's getting hit by the regulators in the news, because they expect the bigger companies to be doing the due diligence, and so, you know, you'll hear stories about in the healthcare industry where the payment card manufacturer made a mistake, but yet the healthcare partner, the larger healthcare partner, is the one that's you know, suffering the damages, or you know, a airline online booking company that services 141 different airlines, and those are the kind of stories we're seeing that are, you know, you know, they're getting some ramifications of that, the smaller company, but it's really the brand damage to the bigger company that's really suffering, and so having that way to assure that the third party you're bringing on is meeting a minimum security requirements it becomes really important.
So here's what I'll tell you from a legal perspective, and just to wind down quickly on what Matt is saying here. From a contractual perspective, I think we all sort of fall into the trap, many of us do, to fall into the trap of saying, hey, I've done my pre-contract due diligence, probably done a privacy and security impact assessment. Increasingly, the law and best practices require that, so that's a good thing. So you've kicked the tires. And I've got contract language that says everybody will abide by applicable law, and then I've reserved myself an audit right. And to Matt's point, that's really not sufficient. But knowing that in a one-to-many vendor situation or in a customer situation where, you know, we're fundamentally a shirts and shoes company, I don't actually have the expertise in-house to go and test some of the systems that are handling some of this very sophisticated data transactions. So creating a paradigm where those vendors can certify back. The security teams all get to keep their eyes on the prize. Matt's team gets to work on what it needs to work on. You as a buyer of technology services from a third party get to do the same, and they get to do the same and audit once. CMMC is probably something you guys are going to hear a lot about this week from DoD, you know, whether it's an ISO certification or a SOC 2 Type 2 or whatever the audit is that gives that provider the opportunity to test against those criteria and certify back. I think that gives you a good narrative to the regulators to say, hey, I've done the testing that you've required of me, because as the controller of that information, I'm ultimately accountable even though someone's processing that on my behalf. I have no seconds left, but I want to leave you with one thing, and it's have a North Star, right? If you know what that value is before you're in a breach, but if you can develop it even when you're in it, and have a guiding principle. So quick narrative, in 2018, on the morning of our breach, the chief digital officer pulled me and the core team into his office, and he said, a few months ago, we rolled out 8 core values of this company, and this is what we stand for. And these are going to be the guiding principles of how we approach this, and it's going to inform everything we do. And so it avoided a lot of unnecessary distracting debate, and it kept us focused on one thing, and that was the mission to protect the house. I would encourage you to develop that before you start, but have one when you're in it, because it will help you guide that and protect your own house. Thank you very much.
Thanks.